Story 1. This is the photo Kurt Diemberger took after his companion, the illustrious alpinist Hermann Buell, fell into the abyss on the Himalayan mountain Kagalisa. Buell was walking behind Diemberger and momentarily left the trail, after which he fell through an overhanging cornice. He remains in the ice. Story 2. The leading image on Franklin Delano Floyd's Wikipedia page shows a father and his daughter posing for a family photo. In actuality, the little girl is Floyd's stepdaughter, Suzanne Marie Savakis, whom he kidnapped around 1974 when Suzanne was under 10 years old. He would go on to raise her as his daughter, putting her through high school under several pseudonyms, then have a son with her in 1988 and marry her in 1989 under the name Tanya Hughes. By 1990, Tanya, also known as Suzanne, had decided to leave Floyd and take her son Michael with her. In April of that year, she was found beaten and bruised on the side of a highway and subsequently died in the hospital. Michael went into foster care and was adopted by a loving family, only to be kidnapped by Floyd in 1994 and to never be seen again. Floyd was arrested in late 1994. The news about his late second wife being his kidnapped stepdaughter didn't come out until 2014. Someone rightly pointed out that Michael is not Floyd's biological son. This was only discovered when DNA testing was performed as part of Michael's adoption in 1994, when he was 4 to 5 years old. Presumably, up until that point, Floyd had reason to believe he was the biological father. Photos of his were found that depicted sexual exploitation of Suzanne, also known as Tanya, from the age of 4. Story 3. This picture of First Lady Rosalind Carter shaking hands with serial killer John Wayne Gacy, who was active in politics at the time. Story 4. This isn't as gruesome as some of the others, but I always thought this guy looked more like a male model than an assassin. Lewis Powell was a co-conspirator of John Wilkes Booth, and he attempted to assassinate William Henry Seward, the United States Secretary of State. This is a colorized digital restoration of one of his photos. I guess the photo is only seemingly normal if you don't notice the cuffs. Story 5. This man kidnapped, raped, and abused the son of Gary Plosh. As he was walking through the airport, Gary was at a payphone, and when he passed by, Gary turned and shot him in the head. I don't believe he served any jail time. Story 6. This old photo of mountaineers from 1924 shows the men George Mallory, the greatest mountaineer of the early 20th century, and his climbing partner Sandy Irvine at their advance camp on Everest. 2 days later, they would attempt the summit and disappear without a trace. This picture especially puts the last one in context for me. Those are Mallory's remains, found in 1999. The same man in both pictures, 75 years apart. Irvine's body is still missing. Evidence is inconclusive whether they made the summit before their deaths. Story 7. The instrument in that picture is the Hartley violin. It was owned by Wallace Hartley, the bandmaster and lead violinist on the Titanic. It was the one he carried with him on the night the ship sank. Survivors reported seeing Hartley and his band on the deck of the ship during the sinking, playing to calm passengers as they boarded the insufficient lifeboats. This is the exact instrument he played. Hartley and every member of the band died in the sinking. We have his violin because at some unknown point before his death, Hartley tucked the violin back into its monogrammed case for safekeeping. That's how it was found, floating in the debris field, by one of the ships sent to recover bodies from the wreck. They were able to identify it as Hartley's because of an engraved brass plate, and it was returned to his fiancée, who kept it until her death. Her family authenticated it and sold it for $1.6 million to an organization that collects Titanic artifacts. Story 8. There's a photo of an American volcanologist sitting down while studying volcanic activity at Mount St. Helens. 13 hours after the photograph was taken, on May 18, 1980, the volcano erupted and killed 57 people, including the volcanologist. Story 9. Eyes of Hate, a candid photograph of Goebbels after he finds out his photographer was Jewish, 1933. If looks could kill, I found him sitting alone at a folding table on the lawn of the hotel. I photographed him from a distance without him being aware of it. As documentary reportage, the picture may have some value. It suggests his aloofness. Later, I found him at the same table surrounded by aides and bodyguards. Goebbels seemed so small while his bodyguards were huge. I walked up close and photographed Goebbels. It was horrible. He looked up at me with an expression full of hate. The result, however, was a much stronger photograph. There is no substitute for close personal contact and involvement with the subject, no matter how unpleasant it may be. He looked at me with hateful eyes and waited for me to wither. But I didn't wither. If I have a camera in my hand, I don't know fear. Story 10. This photo of nightclub kiss was posted on Facebook by one of the DJs. Later that night, 245 people would die and more than 680 would be injured when the band Gurzada Fandangera lit a flare that ignited the flammable acoustic foam in the ceiling. There weren't enough emergency exits. It was overcrowded by hundreds, and the security guards trapped the victims inside in an attempt to organize the crowd. The responsible are still unpunished. Story 11. Politician Bud Dwyer opening an envelope. He was holding a televised press conference about a scandal he was being accused of when the envelope was delivered to him during the press conference. He continued by opening the envelope and revealing a handgun that he promptly put in his mouth, killing himself live on national television. This is one of the primary reasons many live news reports are preempted by a few minutes, just in case. Story 12. This photo shows John Edwards Robinson, wearing a yellow sweater, holding baby Tiffany. He murdered her mother the day before. He gave baby Tiffany to his brother, claiming she was adopted. His brother and Tiffany did not discover the truth for 15 years. Story 13. A man swam to his girlfriend in their underwater hotel room while on vacation in Tanzania and proposed to her with a note and a ring. He died before he could resurface from the water. Story 14. This photo of Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka at their wedding coincides with the discovery of one of their victims. Story 15. A kid went missing while hiking at a spot on the Big Island of Hawaii. He texted some pictures of the scenery while he was hiking. After he didn't show up at home, his family noticed somebody lurking in the bushes in the photos he sent. If I recall correctly, my family in Hawaii said the spot is illegal to hike, so it wouldn't have been a heavily populated trail. Story 16. This photo was taken at a nightclub before it caught on fire by fireworks, leaving 100 people dead. Story 17. Sad story of a missing 4-year-old later found dead from asphyxiation, wedged at the foot of her bed between the mattress and frame. You can barely make out the little bulge of her body in that picture, but you can. The picture of the bed ran on the news, and the mom did interviews while sitting on it. There are more graphic pictures of what it looked like with the blankets removed and the body uncovered, but I'm not going to link that. Her body wasn't found after professionals and search dogs searched the room. It was found once the smell got bad enough. Also, I'm pretty sure I read someone slept in the bed during that time, but not sure on that. Story 18. This physicist, Harold Agnew, is holding the nuclear core of the Fat Man atomic bomb, which was dropped on Nagasaki. There is one more picture of Agnew on that webpage. Story 19. This image may seem quite insignificant, but this was Marco Simoncelli's number 58, white and red motorcycle in the middle of the pack, last race. It's on YouTube and there are plenty of articles about it, but there was a crash and his helmet came off. His good friend Valentino Rossi, also in that shot, number 46, was unable to avoid him and went over his head. 10 years ago this year, still one of the most horrific live sporting events I have witnessed. Story 20. Two brothers smiling. Kevin and Bart Whitaker. Hours later, after arriving home from dinner, Bart killed Kevin and his mother after conspiring with a friend. He tried to kill his father as well, but he survived. It's a horrible story. I don't know what became of Bart though. All I know is that his father somehow found the courage to forgive him. Story 21. I read all of these but didn't see the relatively recent murder case of the two girls from Delphi, Libby and Abby. It's an ongoing investigation, but local law enforcement released a film of their killer taken from one of the girls' phones, and also a photo of Abby walking over the railway bridge shortly before they disappeared. Story 22. The Lawson family portrait always makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Wikipedia tells their awful tale, which has been memorialized in murder ballads. Dressed in their finest, a picture made for the holidays, and no one knowing that the father would kill most of the family days later. Brutal stuff. Story 23. Apparently, this is a photo of a 4-year-old girl's footprints before she drowned in a pond. Story 24. Here is the corrected text suitable for Azure Text-to-Speak AI. Here is Juana Barraza, former professional wrestler and serial killer. She strangled elderly women by pretending to work for the government. It is a sad story. She was sold to a man as a sex slave for 3 beers when she was 12 years old until her stepfather found her at 17. She ended up with 4 failed marriages and 4 children and worked doing odd jobs as a launderer or cleaner. Then she started killing and robbing elderly women if they upset her because they reminded her of her abusive mother. It is a sad and tragic story. Story 25. Jewish children holding hands as they unknowingly walk to their deaths in the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Story 26. This photo of some graffiti in 2019 on the inside of an old bus is from a newly married couple who hiked deep into the Alaskan wilderness and were staying at the Magic Bus, made famous by the book and movie from 2007, Into the Wild, about Chris McCandless, who hiked into the Alaska wilderness in the early 90s with little food and equipment and spent the summer living in an old abandoned school bus he found, but later got stuck there because of a flooded river and died of starvation. The married couple stayed overnight at the bus, which, because of its fame, attracts hikers, but the next day, when they attempted to leave, the river was swollen and the wife got swept away and drowned, despite the frantic actions of the husband. Since then, the government brought in a helicopter and airlifted out the old bus so more people wouldn't visit it. Story 27. I've posted this before. Politician at an election rally. Last photo of Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Taken moments before a suicide bomber bent down, touched his feet, and detonated her bomb. Edit. Last 2 frames of the film. Story 28. The kid on the right in this photo had already paid 2 of his buddies to murder his family that night. They would kill the mother and brother, but the father who took the photo survived. Story 29. Brandon Price. The picture in the article is the only known picture of him. He was living with his grandparents and being abused. He was dead when his grandmother brought him to the hospital. She has been charged and, the last I heard, was still awaiting trial for his death. The community took up donations to pay for his burial and headstone. He looks completely demoralized in the picture, and I've always felt so bad for him. Story 30. This was the last picture taken of Dale Earnhardt. It is weird because the race was televised and 10 to 15 million people were watching at the time, but this is the last one that shows him as a person and not just a car. This is a replay of the crash along with an onboard roof view, and the half-speed does not do justice to how hard and fast it was hitting the wall head-on at 190 miles per hour. He was the face and living legend of what was the second most popular sport at the time, and 20 years later, fans who were watching at the time still have not gotten over watching their hero die live on television. Edit. I appreciate that this is bringing up a lot of memories. I really got introduced to death by being a National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing fan, but fortunately, since this accident, nobody has passed away since, including from this which happened in the same race 19 years later. The replays at the end are still hard to watch and legitimately gave me the same anxiety Dale gave me until they announced he was stable like 2 hours later. Story 31. What you are seeing is a normal photo of a scuba diver, but in the background you can see another diver behind them heading swiftly for the ocean floor, and on the right-hand side of the image, there is a flat and strangely stiff figure. Tina Watson, about 100 feet underwater, unconscious or likely already dead. Tina was visiting Australia on her honeymoon with her new husband Gabe Watson, also a diver, who convinced her to get certified despite Tina being very nervous and uncomfortable underwater. During an open ocean dive that was far too advanced for her limited experience, Tina experienced an equipment malfunction and drowned. Her husband Gabe is, at best, an arrogant, incompetent, lying individual who exaggerated his abilities as a certified rescue diver and was unable to save his wife when she began exhibiting signs of distress. At worst, he is a cold-blooded murderer who deliberately shut off her air supply until she passed out and then allowed her to drown. He gave 16 differing accounts of the incident, which occurred shortly after he requested that Tina make him her sole life insurance beneficiary. On the advice of her father, Tina did not change her policy, but she told Gabe that she had. After being charged with Tina's murder, Gabe pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. His sentence was suspended after only 18 months. He is now back in Alabama. Whatever you believe happened beneath the surface, the photograph is chilling. Story 32. This is a photo of Tyler Hadley holding a cup at a party at his house. Just before this party, he had murdered his mother and father and hid their bodies in the master bedroom. Story 33. This picture was taken of a group of people whose plane crashed in the Andes. They were eventually saved but had to resort to cannibalism to survive. They are all smiling in the photo, but it becomes eerie when you realize the human spine to the right of them in the picture. As many have pointed out, there is a movie based on this event called Alive. Story 34. If you are British and of a certain age, you will probably be as haunted by this grainy image as I am. I still distinctly remember the first time I saw it. At the time, James Bulger was only missing, and it was regarded as a cause for optimism that he was last seen with other children. The truth was far worse than anyone imagined and still inspires a visceral reaction unlike any other crime in my lifetime.